Election day is upon us, within 1 to 2 days depending on when you're watching this episode, but that begs the question, can you be paid for voting? One of the questions we receive most frequently around election time is whether employers have to pay their employees to vote. Under federal law, there's really no guidance, mandate, statute, regulation, etc. that requires employers to, one, permit their employees to vote, or two, pay those employees for the time it takes to go to the polling location, stand in line, and vote. There are a number of states, about half the country actually, where it is required that employers permit their employees to have paid time off to vote, with some conditions, of course. I'm gonna put those 24 states up on the screen now for you. If you're in one of those states, you do have regulations as an employer for the benefit of the employee to go to the polling location and be paid for the time you spend there voting. Let's get to some of those conditions. That first caveat is whether the employee has the ability to vote before or after work. The second caveat that's most typically found in these state requirements is whether the employee provided adequate notice to their employer of the need to vote. As you're sitting there, you're probably thinking, hey, don't most polling locations open early in the morning around 7 a.m. and close at night, 7 p.m., 7:30? Why can't those employees vote during that window of time, especially if they have an 8 or 9 hour shift? Picture yourself being in a position where you are at a hospital where you have, a 12-hour shift that may start at 7 a.m. and end at 7 p.m. You can't physically get to the polling location after your shift ends at the hospital. Other positions, such as fire and EMS, are actually at the station for 24 hours at a time for a shift. There are many jobs out there where they do not have the availability to vote both before or after their shift ends. Now, let's look at one of these states for an example. First, we'll turn to California. In this state, employees can get up to 2 hours of paid leave before or after the end of their shift if they need time to either come in late or leave early to vote. Now, employees do need to give at least 2 working days notice to their employers of the need to come in late or leave early in order to have those 2 hours of voting time paid for. In Colorado, you also have up to 2 hours of paid leave available to you. The caveat is, however, if the employee has the availability to take either 3 hours before the start of their shift or 3 hours at the end of their shift in order to vote, those 2 hours are not paid. So for example, if the polling locations close at 7 and an employee leaves at 4, they have that 3 hours to vote, and those 2 hours that they may need under the statute are not paid for in Colorado. So if you're in one of the 24 states that provides the opportunity for employees to receive payment from their employer for voting, make sure you check your local statutes in your state regarding the requirements to, 1, get paid, 2, give notice to your employer, or 3, what policies you as an employer may need to have in place informing your employees of their right to be paid a certain number of hours in order to vote. Now, on the other hand, there's about 5 states where employees have the right to miss work, coming in late, leaving early in order to go vote, but that time is not paid. That's time you're gonna have to spend, on your own dime voting. Perhaps your employer may allow you to use some PTO time if that's available to you, but otherwise that time is unpaid. The remaining states have no statute, regulations, rules, or otherwise on employees' rights to vote. Therefore, it's kind of whatever the employer is going to decide in these states that we have up on the screen. I will say a lot of employers will work with their employees to give them the ability to vote, within reason. Again, allowing them to come in a little late, maybe leave a little early to make sure they get to that polling location. Much like this next election, it's kind of the Wild West out there in terms of whether employers are required to pay their employees. Therefore, definitely check with your attorney or your state statutes and regulations for more information on if you need to pay your employees who need to spend time voting. We'll see you again next time.